Hello, everyone. It's Martha Novak. Always have to wait for that music. Um, it's so nice to be here this Sunday morning and talk to you about, honestly, something that I feel is an extremely important subject for all of us, particularly at this time in our development of consciousness on the planet. And that is authenticity and being authentic and bringing all of you in harmony with itself so that you can make really good decisions and see clearly and live a happy life too. That's the big part of it, right? We're going to talk about that today, but you're listening to Real Talk with Martha Novak, and we are awfully glad to have you with us. For those of you that are new, here's how we work. We are broadcast over Facebook Live. We're also broadcast over blogtalkradio.com. And if you would like to talk to me, you're welcome to do so. Our guest call-in number, because this is a live show today, 347-850-1647. And that number is going to get you on the air. So you can talk to me directly, ask questions, make comments. That's wonderful. If you just want to listen, a really easy way to do this is to go to my website, which is, what is it? marthanovak.com. That's Novak, under radio shows. And under radio shows, you'll see two little buttons. One will say Blog Talk Radio, one will say Facebook Live. And you punch one of them and it gets you into the show as a listener. So we are delighted to have you either way. And we love talking to our people too. Oh, hello. Good morning, Kat. Good morning, Lisa. I love you too. And this is those of you that are new to me and that are on Blog Talk Radio. I am talking to people that are writing me, many of them good friends from the past. Well, hello, Mark. Hi. Well, that's wonderful, Mark. We would love to have that. Mark said he might call in. I think that's just great. I'd love to talk with you all. Ladies and gentlemen, really, I'm thrilled to be here, and I think we talk about a series of very important things on the show, and hopefully ask questions that you might not be asked other places, so that you can deepen and find answers to those things. You know, I remember when I was in college, I was asked, I was in a religion course, and they had me do a paper on who is Jesus. And you know what? None of this had developed in me, but I knew I didn't believe a lot of the stuff that I had been told. I had sung in a Baptist choir. I had been reared in the Presbyterian church. I went to an Episcopal school. I dated Catholic men. I mean, I had a full range of what those churches were like. And let me tell you right now, there is nothing wrong with them. I like them all now. However, I was left not really knowing what I believed and who these people were to me and in my life. I obviously failed that paper. I don't remember what my grade was, quite frankly, but I would say I probably did, because I really had no clue. And what was so wonderful about that is it bothered me that I didn't know, right? It led me to, I think, that openness of that, we don't think of being bothered sometimes as openness. It can be. I think sometimes we think of being bothered as just an annoyance that we try to swat away. But when you let something bother you and you're open to it, the answers will come. And certainly through my years, the answers that I was satisfied with did come. And I'm always looking for more, because that's just me. So I want to put that on the table. You know, we all don't know everything. This is a process. I think something that I said last week is really true. We don't know what we don't know. We just know we're unhappy. And you know what? That's a marvelous call to saying, I don't know what's making me unhappy. Let's find out. I think that openness And sometimes, if you can even achieve it, the innocence that we had when we were children, even if we weren't allowed that innocence, some of us were not, but it still lives in you. And it is open, and it is investigatory. And I think it's extremely important aspect for us to find in us, so that we can always know what we're not aware of. So we're going to be talking about authenticity today. Let's do a quick prayer, get us all on the same page. And I'm going to launch off. Okay? Here we go. Dear God, who is all there is, you who are all we are, and all everything is in this world, thank you so much for our being here together under the banner of trying to know ourselves more and find you in us as the authentic love that we are. We now open ourselves to see, hear, sense, and know what you would have us do as we open ourselves to the truth that lies in your enlightenment. We thank you so much for all of this, and we say this prayer now in your name and in the name of the ascended masters and our love-centered guides and friends, and in the name of each and every person listening to the show. We open ourselves to knowing nothing, that it is because it is the you through us, through our highest selves, and through everything in the world that knows it all and will bring that information to us, of course, in the most organic ways. We thank you so much for this. And so it is. Amen. I should say organic and timely ways, because I have seen for years that in spite of our issues that say we got to know it all, we got to know it now, we got to know what it all looks like, that there is almost I always use a surfing image. I don't surf. I don't know anything about surfing. My balance is terrible. You would not want to see me surf. I wouldn't live to tell about it, I don't think. But anyway, they you know, how surfers stay on the edge of the wave if they're really good surfers. I have often felt that with spirit, that there is an energy, a cycle, and spirit picks us up like a good wave when we're open to it, and just takes us safely right on in to shore. But we're right on the edge of the wave. I think a lot of times this has to do with our listening. And here's the thing. I don't think we listen really well and cooperate really well unless we have reached that level of consciousness and authenticity. The authenticity is a result of consciousness, you see, of the opening and deepening of consciousness. Please don't forget that, because I think sometimes everybody wants to feel better. We all do. It's human nature. Nothing wrong with that. But sometimes we put the cart before the horse. And if you have not heard some of my lectures on consciousness itself, I think that's how I started off the radio shows. Go all the way back to the beginning, and you will hear some shows on consciousness. And that is the base of everything, and certainly is the base of authenticity. Knowing more, having confidence in that moreness, that not only we are, but everything is energy, you know. All right. I found a lovely article, and I want to talk from it. You know, what we do on these shows is I'll find a great article I want to talk about, and yet I'm going to add a little bit more, because we all have our different goals when we're writing something like this, or when we're doing a radio show. Now, what I do on these radio shows, what I do for a living, what I do in private sessions, what I do when I'm writing, it's all about consciousness, isn't it? It's about opening up and going deeper and accessing your potential, because that's what's down there, ladies and gentlemen, your potential. I have always been interested in that. You see, there are two parts of you. There's the ego child's mind part of you, the part of you that still thinks like a child, but there's a highest self part of you too. And this is where your potential is. Now, our divine journey is to go from the fear-based ego child's mind to the love-based, right, highest self mind. The purer mind, the more loving mind. Carl Jung said, a wonderful quote, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. This is what he means. You're going to go from the fear-based self to the love-based self. Some people, find this on their deathbeds, and this is why they linger. They expect their ego and their ego child's mind to save them, and nothing's going to save them at that point, but they're still trying to have it do so. I want you all to know that the earlier you all can access in this life, the happier you will be. And I think the world is waking up now, don't you? I think we're all getting this information when we're even younger, We can't get it too young. You know why? Because our brains don't really fully develop until we're in our 20s. So it's all about us until then. And sometimes it's all about us when we're 80, but not if you're in consciousness. It's about the oneness with all life then, of which you are a part, and it is a happy place to be. So we're talking about an article that is entitled 8 Ways to Lead an Authentic Life. This is by Laura K. Shink. She is a PhD, Dr. Shink. And I thought it was a very good article. And as I said, we're going to talk past this article as well, just here and there. Now, when she talks about the authentic life, here's what she means, and I think this is a good definition, and I have various ways of saying this, and I will give you those. It's when our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors are all in harmony. Now, I'm going to add with our values, with who we really are. You've heard other shows that I've given on values. If you haven't done your values, I think it's an extremely important thing. And for those of you that are new, here's what I recommend. This is how I teach, even my advanced people. I'm giving it to you now. What I want you to do is get on the internet and look for just look under the word values, and all these people will come up who have values listed. Find a list that's the longest, okay? Tick off the ones that you think you are, not what you want to become, not what you want to become. What are you authentically living right now? And then what I want you to do is only choose 3 of them, because we've got to watch you to make sure you are living authentically, because what happens with the ego child's mind is it's a great liar. No offense, but it is a great liar. We're all great liars in the ego child's mind. So we say we're doing something and it's their fault because we're doing it all right, and that's not the way this works, right? What we want you to do is to choose 3 that you say, I think I'm almost there with all 3 of these, and then start living just those 3. Bring them into every interaction. Stand there in your interactions and be very, very conscious of them. What's going to happen is something's going to happen and you're going to be very unhappy, and you're going to look back at your list and you're going to go, oh my God, 1 to 3 of those I betrayed. I crossed a line. I was not in harmony with those things in this instance. That's not to self-attack about. It's in this instance. So get right back on your horse and walk into it again and make sure they're there and that you do not do the same thing again. It's a marvelous way of doing things. Now, then, when that becomes second nature and you're living those 3 values, add 2 more. Then add 2 more. And add 2 more. Don't add them too fast, because this has to be deliberate. It has to be conscious and deliberate. It has to be a true higher self choice. Okay? Now that's really important to do. A lot of what we're going to talk about now has to do with values and who you really are. That's the first step of finding out who you really are, to me. That and consciousness work on yourself. I'm kind of skipping ahead. Some of you all only have access to me or this work on a radio show like this. Some of you actually are working with me. Some of you all are working with my team. And some of you all are doing work with other people. And I'm thrilled about that. Every single thing helps. I just don't know what you're doing. So I have to start where I start, okay? I also want to say something to you, which I think is very funny. I guess this was about a year ago. I went to my place that I get my facials, and a woman there whom I just love said, "I don't really understand what you're talking about. I listen, but I don't really understand." What I want to say to you is go back and listen again in another few months to what you didn't understand. You see, the people that are unconscious in this world never go back and listen. They just assume and shut the door. They don't understand. Go back and listen. Keep trying to understand. I know that these shows, my books, fly in the face of our old beliefs. They're designed to do so. I need to shake you up a little bit cellularly so that you'll go to a new order. You know, change is good. If you don't think change is good, that may be why you're unhappy, because if you're not changing, another word for that is being stuck. And being stuck never feels good, ladies and gentlemen. All right, now going on with this article, she says, and she's right, there's a sense of internal distress when one's opinions and beliefs are in conflict with their actions in the world. Now I'm going to say that a different way. There's a lot of internal distress when your ego child's mind experience, whether it's thoughts, feelings, or behaviors, don't match that of the highest self. That's really what it's about. When there is a disharmony there's a problem. Many of you all are certainly into creating a better life for yourselves. You're into how to manifest well. Well, guys, when we talk about you being in the vibrational energy of what you want so it will come to you, guess what we're talking about? This very thing. Your ego child's mind has got to be in harmony with your highest self mind. That means you have to resolve some of the issues in the ego child's mind. That's why people that do this work ultimately become great manifestors, because now everything is in harmony. Now you live in a different arena of energy, this higher self energy, and everything is much better here because the ego child's mind, that inner critic, and the inner person that beats you up all the time, that whatever you want to call this, isn't active. So we must deactivate that. So I want to say that, okay? Now, Dr. Schenck goes on to say that this is called, in psychology, I should put that on the table, cognitive dissonance. When the ego child's mind does not match the highest self, I'm going to put it that way. She says when your thoughts, feelings, and beliefs are in conflict with your actions in the world. Okay, but I honestly think that this is a question of what mind you're in. The ego child's mind, the part of you that thinks like a child and is still by rote behaving that way. When certain things happen, you automatically go into your reaction that you had when you were small. Or the highest self, where you see everything quite globally. You understand the context that you're in. You're able to understand that you're safe, by the way, and you can stay there, or you're not safe and you can get out and deal with this somewhere else that is safe. But there is a clarity there that simply does not exist if you are in the ego child's mind alone. All right. Many people are toggling back and forth between the ego. Hello, Mary. Oh, I'm so glad that you're on the air. On the Facebook. Thank you so much for tuning in, dear. Many people toggle back and forth. It's as if they have one leg in the ego child's mind and one leg in the higher self mind, and they go back and forth, right? And then side that throws us back into the child, and we respond that way. Now, it may be shocking to know that in true authenticity, nothing out there is going to throw you into anything, and you're going to hold on to who you are. Your sense of self, your values, your sense of well-being is always here, no matter what's happening in the world, even if it's pretty scary, even if you've experienced loss, even if you're going through heartbreak. The fact is, even if you're mad as hell, the fact is that the authenticity is there, that the sense of self is there, that there's something quiet and peaceful within, in addition to all the chaos that may be happening around you. Now, it's not true authenticity until you can't be thrown off that. We're going to be talking about that today, all right? Nobody likes cognitive dissidence. Nobody likes even conflict. Nobody likes that. But it's part of the world that we must learn how to deal with. So if you are recognizing you don't deal with conflict well, we have to do some work with you to show you you're perfectly capable of dealing with conflict. It will go a lot better for you if you're dealing with it from the highest self. I'll tell you that right now from my own experience. It's very important. And here's something else. The more authentic you are, the less conflict you start having in your life. I think sometimes we are challenged, I know I was, to be more real. And life tells us when we're not. And you know, that works real well unless we're lying to ourselves and denying ourselves and saying, oh, I was real. And we need to always take a look to see in our real deep honesty if that is true. Okay, because I think a lot of people do respond to our falseness, and they also respond to our truthfulness. Dr. Schenck goes on to say that once the internal and external worlds are once again in line, peace is restored within, and that's true. I will say it's not necessarily the external world. I think even if something is happening externally that upsets you, I think there is a piece that you can hold on to inside. I think what she means here by the internal external world is that your actions are not matching what you say you want to believe. And that I'll buy. So she recommends that you take time to mindfully identify your true values. This is what I'm saying. This is not a exercise you can do on the fly as you're running out the door with your cup of coffee. This is something that you very much need to consider, and you very much need to watch with you. You see, consciousness is about being more conscious. That means being mindful, seeing what you're doing with things, and she's going to talk about this and this, and I think her discussion was very good, very deliberate. Very deliberate. If I choose 3 things, and I have, and I talked to you about them in other shows, that are my values that I add to, then these are core values that I then add to, I've got to be very mindful for a while of making sure that they are always present in everything I do. That means listening to what I say, watching what I'm doing, making sure they're there. Because I know that when I step away and do something else and do not observe that, for some reason go unconscious or be triggered, I'm going to be unhappy. How unhappy you are depends on whether you've betrayed one of those things or all 3 of them. And we need for you to know what you're doing and start taking responsibility for that. Now, that doesn't mean you go away and you beat yourself up about it, because that's the end of your learning when you beat yourself up. You are either beating yourself up for not doing it that time, or you're learning to do it differently next time. Don't you see? It's the same energy. How are you going to use it? This is what I mean. Energy has got to be very deliberate. Good. All right. I think you get it. All right. Now, what we want to put on the table here is, as you observe yourself, as you are considerate of your thoughts and feelings and actions, and are looking at yourself, self-acceptance is really important. Everybody in the world, I've never met anybody that wasn't like this, judges their ego child's mind. There are things that they don't like about themselves, right? But that is absolutely the wrong direction to go when we're talking about consciousness and deepening it, and, by the way, authenticity that comes out of it. This is not about eschewing that or pushing that away or denying this. It's about the acceptance of everything. That's what we mean by self-acceptance. We accept the light and the dark, the good and the bad, the tendencies of all kinds. We accept this. And only when you accept it can you deliberately change it. You see, we all are light and dark, aren't we? I mean, if God is everything, we actually are denying energy when we deny certain things. We're all selfish people. Who isn't? If you're trying to disguise that, why? That's part of humanness. You want to accept it, realize you have a tendency for that, like I do, and then decide to do something else with it. You can't do something else with it until you own it as part of you. And in my opinion, the whole world is self-attacking too much. And then all sorts of coping behaviors come out of that. Like fantasy, like narcissism, and a lot of other things. Why beat yourself up like that? Why disguise who you really are as real when there's nothing wrong with real and never has been? Okay, let's keep going. She gives some characteristics of leading an authentic life. Let's put those on the table before we talk about how to get there and what to do, because I think her suggestions are good. You know, one of the things that I do is I try to seek out information, and I certainly try to give you information that you don't hear a lot of other places, because, you know, I think a lot of you all that listen to me are really beyond a lot of the games and exercises that are given to us in the beginning, you know. So I don't tend to go to those articles. I tend to pick up things that say what I'm saying in a different way, or say something that I haven't said that I like. So here we go. Characteristics of leading an authentic life. The first one is feeling open to your moment-to-moment experience without distortions, denial, or self-invalidation. All right, let's talk about that, because you know I'm going to. So here we go. I will also say without dishonesty, without fantasy. Okay? Let's put those in. Now, the distortions that she's talking about are cognitive distortions. I've done far too many shows on the cognitive distortions. Please go back and listen to those things. Be challenged by them. See them in your life. We've also not only given you what the cognitive distortions are, but how to fix them. There are pretty easy fixes for these things. Hard in that you've never done them before. You always go to the cognitive distortions. That's the door you go into. So we need for you to be aware that you have a tendency to go through that cognitive distortion door. And the consciousness now to say, I feel myself wanting to go through that door. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to do this instead. Really important. So that's certainly an incredibly important part of this. If you find yourself being dishonest about things, just admit it. You know, I've got several clients that are extremely dishonest to themselves. They lie to themselves constantly. Why isn't that all right at this point in their development? The fact is, it is. My job is to come along and say, "Ooh, that's a great big old lie," and for them to say, "Whoa, it's a big old lie." If that's all you can do right now, it's perfectly all right. That's part of the process, right? So for God's sake, don't beat yourself up for not seeing it. It's really important, because once you see something you haven't been aware of, you're not going to forget it. That's not the way awareness works, right? Okay. Denial. Let's talk about that. I love the line, "It's not just a river in Egypt." Denial is a kind of avoidance. In fact, all of these things are kind of avoidance. Look, how you really feel, what you really think, and who you really are is going to come out one way or another. If one does not speak with authenticity, it comes out in other ways. I've noticed for years how people don't say how they feel, don't say what they're thinking, and then they explode later. And they haven't even noticed that there were these little tiny moments along the way where they did not speak up, where they did not even acknowledge they were bothered, they did not fix them, and so here we go. Right? We can't avoid, guys, emotional intelligence, knowing what you're feeling, being able to articulate it in a loving and truthful and good way is part of this process. Now, you be careful, because the ego child's mind, and this is one of the ways it tricks you, is to say, "I have to speak my truth," and the fist is in the air like Scarlet and the Radish, right? No. That kind of adamancy is actually part of the ego child's mind. Nobody has to speak the truth. It's just the truth, and you have to be aware of it. And sometimes you don't speak it. Sometimes it's it's you giving yourself credit for having it and realizing it about yourself. Sometimes you say it out loud. Sometimes you do not. But don't fool yourself with these catchphrases you hear. Okay? Moving along. Well, hello. Hi, Heron. It's so nice that you are with us today. I'm delighted about that. Let's talk about self-invalidation a minute. I find self-invalidation fascinating because there are thousands of ways to self-invalidate. Now, I've mentioned some here, right? But blaming yourself, shaming yourself, putting more energy into what other people out there are thinking than who you are and what you believe, caring more about what they think about you than what you think about yourself. These are just some of the ones that are on the surface that are occurring to me. I'm going to tell you right now that the ego child's mind is enormously tricky. And as soon as it stops shouting at you and showing you these big things you do, there are a lot of little subtle things you're doing that will also pull you down. The ego will go with you. Oh yes, if your intention is set for consciousness, it'll at one point go, okay, we'll go there. And then it starts very suddenly pulling the rug out from under you. You won't consider yourself here. You won't consider yourself there. You'll cross a little boundary here. You'll tell yourself it's not that important. And you know what? It is. It certainly is. And we have to catch those moments too. All right. Her next point is this: living a fully awake life in the present moment. This is the characteristics, by the way, of leading the authentic life. Living a fully awake life in the present moment, allowing the self to feel fluid and dynamic rather than static. Well, I agree with all those words, but how does that translate in your day-to-day existence? First of all, being fully awake in life in the present moment. If you want to, by the way, know more about this, I've done a series on my DVD. There's a DVD mounted on my site you can get. And I talk about how to be present with every cell of the body. I did talk about it last week too. Present with every cell of the body. It means that when you're standing there in a confrontation, this is what I said, you have to get comfortable with conflict. That doesn't turn you into a high conflict person. There are people that are real comfortable with conflict, and they're high conflict individuals. We don't want that. This means that you know who you are, and that God is present within you, and God is present in all situations, and that you know who you are, and you can stand there and you can dialogue with this person and find a good solution. You can work through the problem. That's ideal, right? And that's emotional maturity, that we work through the problem. But we have to be fully awake in the moment. And what that means is, I've seen people for years just go away. When they feel threatened, they're just gone. And you can kind of see this blank stare in their eyes. You know, they're not here. They have gone somewhere energetically to protect themselves, and they aren't here. First thing you have to do to work something out is be here. Allowing yourself to feel fluid and dynamic instead of static. I think one of the big words here, and I've said this before, is cooperation. You need to cooperate with your highest self. It may not work the way you want it to work, but that's the ego child's mind wanting it to work a certain way. And we have to get past that to be able to say, okay, I need this. Send it to me in the way you choose, dear God, and I will be open to it. But what happens when it starts coming in a way that we don't like? We shut the door and we say, that's it. That's not going to work. We're talking about keeping very flexible. If you've never, and flexibility and adaptability, by the way, are something you learn. I think all of us are little control freaks, and we have to learn this in consciousness work. We have to learn to be open and to go with, okay? There are always gifts in the going with that we can't see. We get what we want in the end, unless you stop the energy from working through it, you see? All right. What she means by static is we can be stuck. We have to be fluid, and we have to allow the self the fluidity of cooperation. That's why I'm saying that her language is different from mine, and I'm trying to put it in different words for you. We have to learn to cooperate with the highest self. So what happens if we are still trying to hide parts of ourselves? That's not energy available to cooperate and to listen. If we're trying to hide, if we're wearing an image, public image, we've just truncated a lot of that energy that is cooperation and is truth and is what to do next. Keep in mind the innocence. Keep in mind the openness. And cooperation is a huge part of it. And it's part of that energy. Okay. Her next point. Deep inner trust and faith in your own intuition and ability to self-direct your course in life. People constantly forget this, that they are creating their lives. There's a great argument about that. Oh, something bad happened to me. I didn't create this. And everybody has their fist in the air with a radish. Yeah, we create everything. We create everything by omission and commission. Sometimes we do things that we later regret. Sometimes we don't do things that we later regret. The fact is, we simply need to cultivate ourselves, who we are, know our values, live in a real way. And at some point in that process of our getting straight with ourselves, we see indeed we do correct. Now, I've been working with my team, this advanced class, for years, 18, 20 years maybe. It can be that long for some people. And for other people, it may seem that long. But the truth is, it has been that long. Okay, now let's go back. We laugh about that a lot, by the way. I'm still reminding a few people in that class that they're not doing this well, that they don't realize that they create their lives. So something unfortunate happens and it triggers off some level of anxiety, and they talk themselves out of it. And we had a real interesting and very significant thing that happened yesterday. We're talking about this very thing, and I said to someone, so I hear that you were triggered. I hear that you, in some way, talked yourself out of it. What did you say? What did you do? And this person, who's usually super aware, right, said, I can't tell you. You're putting me on the spot. I'm having to. And I said, you should know what you believe. You should know what you think every single time. She had not, God bless her soul, but she had not gone on and said, no, here's the truth. She was fumbling for it here and there. Don't fumble. Know what you believe. Go back to it every time. Be deliberate. Understand? I hope so. Certainly, as you open this more and more and more, you do find a deep inner trust and a real faith in your own abilities and your own intuition. First of all, intuition opens through this process of consciousness. It just does. And it's really interesting because people, when they first start with me or with my team, they'll come in and they'll say, I don't trust. Give me trust. And it's like, you'll be working on that your whole life. That's a core issue, is distrust, because you've never learned to trust yourself and God and the deep levels and the things beyond that are in the unknown until they're known. And will everything be known? No, never will. That's the most interesting part of this. You keep going, you see. So it's not trust, a light switch you can turn on and off. It wouldn't be special then, would it? I think that when you start living in the higher self mind, there's such intense compassion for yourself and all people and gratitude because it was a struggle. Can't be any other way. And that doesn't have anything to do with the kind of family you came from, because some of us came from very rough families, some of us came from very easy families. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with your journey. That's all. Because it's all a struggle, because our ego child's mind is fighting this the whole way until it isn't. And at one point, you just let it all go, and it's such a relief. And you're just in a different energy, and you always will be for the rest of your life. And then you still work on yourself. Isn't that nice? How How great can you be? How big is your potential? What are you going to do next? Her next point is, we are talking about the characteristics of leading an authentic life. Her next point is feeling the freedom and ability to respond rather than react to experiences as they occur. And she attributes this to being mindful, and certainly that's part of it. You all have heard me talk about this very subject, that we spend our lives reacting to things instead of having a real choice there. And a reaction is not a choice. A reaction is automatic knee-jerk response, right? It's not the deliberation, the thoughtfulness, the bringing all of you to bear on a personal choice. Certainly, being mindful is part of this. Now, here's my problem with being mindful in all the mindfulness studies is you can't do it. I like things that you can do today, okay? You can't do mindfulness. You can frustrate yourself and say, okay, I'll bring myself back here because I'm supposed to, right? I'm supposed to be mindful. But as I said, you already go someplace else in your mind. You may be fantasizing. You are trying to protect yourself in a million different ways. And we've got to address those things. If this is going to be a permanent fix and you're going to live in mindfulness, then by God, we need to find out why you're not living in mindfulness. You see? That's really important. And for you to challenge what the truth of this is. And if you are in danger, for God's sake, get out. If you're not, then stay there and learn to work through something and listen to God and be open. The odd thing is when we feel like when we are in a conflict situation, what's your first thing to do? Shut down, right? We can do a lot of other more extreme things, but we shut down to protect ourselves energetically. The irony here is the real value, the solution to this whole thing is for you to be vulnerable and say, I have a position, you have a position, they don't agree. Now, let's go be mad for a while. Let's think through what we're doing and why we feel the way we do, and let's come back to the middle. And let's be vulnerable with each other and find a solution so this thing doesn't happen again in this way. So we don't have to argue about it anymore, right? But what do you have instead? Oh, all these lovely platitudes like, never go to bed angry. Oh, please. Please. A lot of arguments don't happen until midnight, right? So don't buy any of these things that you slap on top of. Don't buy the platitudes that society is giving you. You must decide how to work and how to work dynamically yourself. Oops, something is happening here, and I don't want it to. I think I hit the wrong button. There we are. We're back. Okay. You've got to know yourself and start learning to work with yourself in a different way, right? All right, let's keep going. Her last point is, now we are talking about characteristics of leading an authentic life. Her next point is adopting a creative approach to life, demonstrating psychological flexibility rather than rigidity and closed-mindedness. I think I've addressed some of this, but I'm going to keep talking just a little bit. If you've ever done any creative pursuits, I've been creative my whole life. Creativity is one of my values, as a matter of fact. You learn to work with yourself a certain way. You create, you destroy. You create, you destroy. I'm working on my third book now. It's a fiction book. I think it's good. I like it. It'd be something I would want to read. I'm at the point now where if it doesn't advance the plot or if it doesn't reveal the character, it's out. All there is to it. I got to tighten this up. I'm at that point now. Tighten it up. That psychological flexibility. I talked to a friend of mine yesterday, and she was the editor of a book that's about to come out. Sounds like a really great book. But she was saying that this particular author didn't want to cut certain passages in his book. And he fought her, and he won. And then he went to an agent, and the agent wanted to cut the same passages, and he fought her. And he went to another agent, and that agent wanted to cut the same passages, and he fought that person. And he finally found a third one who said, cut these passages, and he listened. Guys, we're all just little egocentric people. We have to not be. We have to cut what we need to cut out of our lives. We need to learn what we don't know. We need to, once we know what our superpowers are, we need to get better and better at them, right? Psychological flexibility. Now, she's talking about that in relationship to rigidity and closed-mindedness, and absolutely, you can't be rigid. You can't have a set of rules and rote ideas to live by or to say. Every moment's new. Every moment is a creative moment. Every moment is an improvisation. That's why I always think that taking a really good improvisation course or something creative is a marvelous outlet for all of us. The arts have been there for a long time to open some of this for us. I do suggest that. We must live with psychological flexibility. I'll tell you why I like improvisation. The same things that close down an improvisation and make it fail are the same things that make life fail and close it down. Judgmentalism. If I'm standing there saying, what a beautiful day, and somebody else comes along and says something that I don't like, and I judge them in the improvisation, I've killed it. Another thing is trying to control the moment and contradict the moment. Again, this is not cooperation. If I say it's a beautiful day and he says that it's not, it's raining, the improvisation's dead. You have to be mindful in improvisation. You have to be in the moment and really listen and work off that. You see? And it's very similar to the way life is. And it's a wonderful exercise in that. I send a lot of people that are rigid and closed-minded to an improvisation class. And they're fun, too, by the way. But they do challenge you. She has some suggestions about how to live authentically, and I think they're good. So let's talk about those next. I love when people like Dr. Schenck think outside the box. And she does, because one of the things that impressed me is the first thing she says is, read novels. Read novels. I have had clients through the years that will say, oh, I don't read fiction. It's fiction is a waste of my time. I want to be significant, and I want to read significant things. They're very interesting. I have another client of mine that I'm working with right now who is seeing the light on this, but she was reared in an environment that her mother was determined she was never going to watch television. Absolutely not. Television was a waste of time. It was, look at the closed-mindedness here. Now, the interesting thing is, I got to watch a lot of television. My family took me to plenty of musicals when I was a little kid, live musicals. I saw some great talent. Ethel Merman, I saw Mickey Rooney, I saw Anna Maria Alberghetti. The list goes on and on and on. What's her name? I saw some major, major talent out there. I wouldn't be doing what I am doing in any aspect of my being. I wouldn't have had a theatrical and film career if I had not been subjected to all of that. Because there's something that happens. It turns on your creativity. And you think, I can do that. At some point, that triggers. I can do that. I can write that. I can be that. I can... You can't deny a part of the world to people. You can help children put it in perspective. You know, I think there are an awful lot of ads that are unnecessary on Saturday morning television that are, you know, telling kids that they should want. And I think that's just fine, but it takes a good parent to sit down and say, here's what they're doing psychologically to you. So of course you want this. And maybe at Christmas, or maybe not. You know, how you handle it is your way. But to deny someone a creative experience, not good. Now, there are several reasons for that. There's a guy named John Portman, who is a professor of religious ethics at the University of Virginia. And she quotes him. And he says, the best way to figure out what it feels like to be in someone else's head is the novel. And that's what helps us to distinguish our own identity. She goes on to say another way to think about this idea is to consider the benefits of taking a step outside of total attachment to your own experience, of course, and becoming more observant. Well, I think that is just great. I think reading is a real important thing. And if you don't like to read, they've got books on tape. Oh, for God's sake, you can input all of this. It isn't a question of you know, do you want to sit there with a book in your hand? Some people are not readers. I'm well aware of that. But that doesn't mean you're not listeners or you're not watchers. You know, the interesting thing to me about this subject is this, because I have a little different take on it. From the time mankind started, we've been sitting around the fires telling our tribal stories, have we not? We've told the stories of our ancestors. We've told the stories of nature. We've told stories. Well, what do you think that translates to in present time now that the campfire is a hearth in our house? It translates to watching television, reading a book, listening to a book as we drive around town or go on a trip. This is how, one of the big ways we learn about the world and how to function in the world. We open our mind to more creative aspects, to ways of thinking we've never thought of before. You can't make a judgment about what is good and what is bad. And there are novels and things, and fiction things for every taste out there. Books on tape for line the last 25 years of her life. And she had a prejudice about books on tape as being for blind people, and she wouldn't listen. And she was a huge reader her whole life. She denied herself that. There's nothing I could do for her back then to say, Ma, I tried. I mean, I'd say it all the time. Listen to this, listen to this. This is not just for blind people, you know? What a shame. She denied such a happy aspect. And now we've got Kindles and we've got Audible. We've got everything. We can blow up. I still like to read. I love words. So I like to read in addition to all the other ways to input. And Kindle is so wonderful because you blow up on the tablet the words. So I don't have to find my glasses somewhere in the house. Okay. Now, I'm a little off her subject, so I'm going to go back to this. But he's saying read novels. I say input every way you can, all right? But be discriminating about what you input, too. And think. Think. It should make you think. It shouldn't just zone you out. God knows what you're inputting if you are zoned out. Watch what's going on. Have an opinion about it. You see? She goes on to say, developing empathy for the experiences and emotions of other people can help increase your ability to make more meaningful connections with other people in your own lives and build lasting relationships. I think that's true if you are discerning. Awful lot of crap out there as well. Awful lot of ways it's telling you how to have a relationship that are pretty lousy. You have to know what you know. You have to see what you see. I think it's a great way to learn if you have your brain on. I really do. She calls this, and I think it's marvelous the way she's phrasing this, she calls it accurate empathy. Accurate empathy. This is not somebody that just comes along and is mind reading about how others feel. This is accurate empathy. This is someone who, you know enough about psychology to really understand, and you're really listening to the other person. And you're listening not just to what they say, but you're listening to what they don't say. This gets turned on when you've done work on yourself. It doesn't really turn on the accurate empathy part until you do work on yourself. And when you find out how you're wired, all of a sudden you know how everybody's wired. Wow. They're certainly not the same, but all the elements, all the basic elements of ego are pretty much the same. We just put it together differently, you see. Okay. So she goes on to say, accurate empathy can help you truly understand what other people are feeling, which can potentially can have potentially unintended consequences of developing deeper compassion and understanding for your own experience. That's true. I often ask people to watch a movie or see a television show or something like that, or read a book, when I think they're not getting to their own stuff. It'll be specifically to help them break through their own stuff. I remember asking one woman who had a mother who had a lot of borderline characteristics to watch The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie, for example. She was quite the borderline personality. It's a wonderful movie, wonderful book. And she saw things because it wasn't her, right? She saw things there on the screen that she could say, it kind of opened her mind about that. She even said to me the other day, she said, I think I'm going to go back and see that again. There you go. That's the good use of all of this material that we have available to us now. That was her first point. Read novels. I say read novels, listen to novels, go out and watch television, watch movies, see if you're over relating to a character, wow, what is that good information? Find out why you're over relating to them. It points to your issues. Isn't that something? I often ask people when we first start together, what were your favorite books when you were a kid? You know, what did you like to read? Or what was your favorite television show? Or what was your favorite movie? Or what character in literature did you relate to? Is it Cinderella? Lordy, we've got some work to do. what was there. I remember a man I worked with for a while who was a great graphic artist. He drew monsters. That was what his favorite thing to draw was. But he lived a very suppressed existence. And we talked about this at one point. You know, he was in a very, very fundamentalist church. He came out of that and didn't really subscribe to anything. He was looking for something more, found me along the way. And but he drew monsters all. Finally, after several sessions, said, "Why monsters?" He said, "Well, that's what's under the surface I can't let out." That was such a wonderful access key for us to start working on, right? Comes out one way or another, kids. All right, second thing that she suggests is meditation. She says, oh no, she's quoting Steve Cope, scholar in residence at the Kripalu Center for Yoga and Health. He says, and I quote, "Meditative absorption creates moments of happiness not contingent on outcomes or external factors or manipulation of the environment. From that platform, you can investigate how to create real fulfillment." Well, it just sounds great. That won't do it exclusively. I've had a lot of people through the years come to me that are big meditators. Meditation can be used, and by the way, I love meditation. I've been doing it for the last 50 years myself in some form or another. But medication can be used as a drug. It can be used as a drug. I had years ago a man who had been an addict. I think he was, don't remember what his drug of choice was, but he had years of being an addict, and he had found meditation. And he just couldn't fathom that you can raise your energy and be dynamic and still be in that meditative state, because he had used this so long to suppress his urges, to, help him hold on to a very fragile sense of self. Now, my recommendation to him was that we strengthen your sense of self, and you can keep the meditation, but the meditation changes. It becomes, right? One of my favorite meditations is walking meditation. I often do this in the early parts of my classes. I will get them very deep into a meditation where they're really into it, right? And then I'll tell them to stay in that state and open their eyes, and stay in that state and go get a cup of tea, to stay in that state, talk to their friends, to stay in that state and come back into the room, to stay in that state. Now we're talking. And one of the things that I like so much about that kind of meditation is there are many ways to get you to that. You just have to have a real sense of what it's like in that wonderful state. Believe it or not, as we're talking right now, I'm in that state. I look perfectly normal, right? Maybe I don't look that normal, but whatever I look like is what you get. But I'm there. So it's perfectly doable that we live this way or that. I see I have a phone call. I'm going to go to you in just a sec. And we live in the world dynamically. Let's go to our caller. Hello. This is 901 Exchange I'm talking to, and my name is Martha. Who am I talking with?
Hi, this is Lenise.
Denise? Is that what you said? Glennis? Glennis?
Yes.
Okay, Glennis. I think we've talked before.
Lenise.
What?
It's Lenise.
Spell it for me, please, darling.
Lenese.
Oh, Lenice, what a pretty name. You know, that's a name I've never heard before,
Well,
Lenice.
thank you.
What a gorgeous name. That seems like it ought to be on a marquee somewhere, Lenice.
Thank you.
All right. Well, darling, what can I do for you today?
Well, you did a lot for me last Sunday, and so far you're doing a lot for me today already. And I have committed to tuning in every Sunday.
Oh, Lenice, that's so kind of you.
Yeah, you're very helpful.
Thank
I
you.
think I'm at a point of just listening now. I have a whole lot going on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm dealing with a lot of truth and reality now.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm feeling a lot better. I've been through the grief of the loss of my mother.
Yeah.
And it looks like I just kind of shed all the way down. And it'll be 4 years in March. So I decided that, hey, enough grieving. You got to get back to your life. But I haven't been able to do it until now.
You know, Lenice, it happens when it happens. And I'm very proud of everything that you're saying to me. I went through something similar years ago. You know, you said 4 years for you. Mine was now almost 25 years ago when I lost my mother. And my mother and I were very close. There were a lot of unanswered questions back then for me about me and about my marriage and about my spirituality and who I really was. That was becoming. And honestly, that was a very significant time for me to have some of those questions finally asked and in the next few years answered. It took me about as long as it's taken you. So I'm very proud of you saying some of the things that you're doing, and that is, let's get on with living and what I know now. So good for you.
Yeah, that's it.
Good for you. You know what I feel? Yeah, you know, Lenice, what I am feeling, just I can't help but get impressions about people when I'm talking to them, and there is a whole lot of creativity around you right now. It feels like, now you may not, I don't know whether this is a classic form of creativity. It doesn't feel like it. It feels like you are reinventing literally every aspect of your life. And it feels like it is exciting and scary and all those feelings, but it's a very charged time for you. And this is real meaty creativity here for you. Would you feel that? Do you feel it yet?
You are exactly on point. It's exciting, it's scary, and it's every aspect of my life.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to find out what it is that I use my creativity to do and tie it to my abundance. I've been doing nursing work for the last 20 some odd years, and it's really not working for me, and it's not helping me. And I really want to change and move on, even from that. Like, it's every aspect of my life.
Well, Lenice, I feel that. And I can see why you are also drawn to nursing, but it's not using all of you that you've got turned on now. So that's the reason that you're thinking about moving on. May I suggest a couple of things? I think I might have suggested these last week, so I'm going to hurry through them, but I want to remind you to get in your highest self.
Okay.
Get in your highest self and take that Myers-Briggs test I told you about last week. You go to, there's several of them out there, but just use one called, what is it? humanmetrics.com. And go under Jung, like Carl Jung, Myers-Briggs. I think it's the first test. Now, here's the interesting thing about that test. You have to take it. It will not be accurate unless you take it in your highest self, your most honest self. No pretense, no trying to be anything you're not. Okay? You should get a very accurate read. You're also going to be told if that wasn't an accurate read, because you're going to say, well, it's about 75% me, or, well, it's about 50% me. And the truth is, then you've missed a letter or you've missed two letters. So you can either take it again at that time, or what you could do is to go back and read what you could have missed, and you'll recognize you. I've had people do it both ways. So you need to find out what the elements are that you need in your life, because this is beyond what you're talking about right now, Lenise, is beyond your work. This is about your life and creating something that is incredibly fulfilling. Okay. So between Myers-Briggs, also, what I want you to do is list everything you've ever enjoyed in your life, whether you've made money on it or not. I need for you to list everything. For example, I listed everything, I think it was last week, about me. I have loved, and then you've got to see what's in common with all of this. I acted, I enjoyed that. I directed, I enjoyed that. I wrote, I enjoyed that. I teach, I enjoy that. I train businesses, I enjoy that. And I had quite the list. And then I looked to see what all those things had in common. They have two things in common. One, words. I love words. And two, serving people and making people's lives better. It was all about, making them enjoy things, laugh, feel, whatever. And so here I am with what I do for a living, and it incorporates all of this. So you want to find out what those elements are that have so satisfied you throughout your life. You understand? So this isn't a list of all the jobs you've had. It is a list of what you have really enjoyed, and then looking at that list and go, what do these things have in common? Now you combine that with Myers-Briggs, and then you do another, combine that with your values. You'll have exactly what you're supposed to do and how to use yourself.
Sounds like a plan.
It is a plan. There you go. I like plans, don't you? And yet it affords you tons of creativity within that, because you're going to have things that you can do in that, and things you've never even thought of before. So that's just some more information that's, by the way, perfectly free, and it really might turn you on to everything that you're supposed to do next. I like you, Lenise. You are not someone that you are a thinker, and you are a creator, and I'm real proud of you. So you go on, girl. You go as far as you can, okay?
Thank you so much.
All right. I'm going to leave you. Oh, what, darling?
Clearly.
What, dear?
Thank you.
Oh, well, no, I mean it.
Seeing very clearly.
Good. Well, I'm so glad, sweetheart. I'm so glad you called. Would you like me to leave this line open so you can hear the rest of the show?
Yes, please do.
Okay.
Thank you.
That sounds great.
Have a great day.
And you too, sweetie.
Okay.
All right. So we're certainly not going to finish all our work today, but I'm going to be plowing ahead a little bit. So here we go. We were talking about meditation, and I do say that the reason meditation does work, now that I've said why sometimes it doesn't work, is because it removes your fear for a little while. If you're really into a deep meditation, it's only about this moment and the essence of you in this moment. And so fear tends to move to the periphery if it's even there at all. That's great. It is that aspect of meditation that opens what she then says, which is it can lead to developing a greater sense of authenticity by putting things in larger perspective and increasing connection to living your life in a different way. Yes, absolutely, but only if you remove the fear, only if it moves out. Do you understand? So that becomes a very big thing for you, that you simply must, if you're using meditation that way, it simply must create the openness, not deny any aspect of you. You understand? It's wonderful to remove the fear, but if you're using meditation to make your life better and to increase your authenticity, well, guess what? Fear is a part of the self, but it isn't the true self, is it? It is part of the whole. It's part of the ego child's mind, certainly part of that true self. But if we're talking about the advanced mind, if you're talking about your highest self, the fear is more and more replaced by love. Okay, let's move along. Now, number 3 that she says, and I've got only 9 minutes left, but perhaps I can do this. Number 3 is to be deliberate. This is what I said we would be talking about, being deliberate in more detail. Roy Baumeister, who's a social psychologist at the University of Florida, states that, and I quote, sweetie, Lenise, can you mute yourself on that side? I'm just hearing everything you're doing. Lenise?
Okay, sorry.
Thank you. Oh, that's perfectly fine. I want you to be able to move around and do what you're doing. It's just that we can hear it all. Okay? Thank you, sweetie.
Okay, sorry.
That's fine. So, Roy Baumeister, social psychologist at the University of Florida, states that authenticity consists in being aware that you have choices and consciously choosing what you do. I wish I could. I am not. Sweetheart, Lenise, I'm going to have to ask you to call in without that on because I'm hearing too much noise, sweetie, so I'm going to hang up. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm trying to...
Okay. All right. So she goes on to say about what Roy Baumeister said. A large part of living a truly authentic life involves being mindful of your ability to chart your own course and responsibility in choosing your behaviors. When you exercise greater intentionality and deliberation on your interactions with yourself and others, you may experience a resulting sense of authenticity in word and deed. Okay. I agree with that totally. A lot of our work is done, though, on taking responsibility for yourself. It's very hard to say I don't like this aspect of my life or that or any aspect of my life, and I did it all. But you can learn to make very good choices by analyzing the patterns and what your motivations were for doing what you did. That's when things change. I guarantee you that's when things change, okay? But this is being deliberate. You're not finished with anything until you set your intentions about what you want. Ask for what you want. You know, it's very important that we are not shy. Just say, I'm looking for this. Do you have any information for me? Do you, there's nothing wrong with you telling someone like me, I make really lousy choices and I'm in a state. Let's look at why I did this so I can never do this again. And then it's about, just like I said yesterday in class, it's about knowing what you believe and holding on to those things. They will deepen, they will grow, they will change in that aspect. But some basic things will not change. The energy of God works the same every time, and it's remarkable. And there's no way you can predict it. You just know how it works. But you don't know in which aspect it's coming. There are many radio shows on creating the life you want. I'm about to revisit that in the next few weeks. But go back and listen to those shows about creating the life you want. Energy works every single time the same way. All right? This isn't about consciousness. It's just about energy. But you'll be able to do it better in consciousness. I'd like to stop there because I have a whole lot more to say. and it's going to take a while. We have only 5 minutes left. So let's end right here with a good prayer. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not sure I'm going to be doing next week's show. I may or may not, but right now I am waiting to hear whether I have a speaking engagement or not. So I will let you know whether I'm here. If not, we'll be doing it the following week, and I certainly will post it on my website, marthanovak.com. And we'll be also posting on Meetup and all those things, all those ways we post, okay? I do want to thank you very much for following us, sharing us, befriending us, liking us. You know, that's real important to a show like this. If you all are getting the word around for us, and I think you are, because our numbers keep growing, it means the world. And this is how we get the word out. This is one of the ways you are changing the world. We're all changing the world together. So thank you so much for doing that. That means a whole lot. I can't tell you how much that means. I celebrate every single time that comes across my desk. And you guys, I wish you a marvelous, marvelous, happy life, okay? And a wonderful journey to authenticity. Let's do our prayer. Dear God, who is all there is, you who are all we are, and all everything is in this world, we thank you so much. We now open ourselves to a healing here. We will give to our ascended selves, our dear God of our ascended selves, the energies that we can let go of today, that we may deepen in consciousness and in authenticity and live more loving lives. We thank you so much for this, dear God, as we open ourselves to say yes, transmute these energies that we are now giving to our highest self, the God that lives within us and that is all things. We thank you so much for all of this. And we say this prayer now in your name, in the name of the Ascended Masters, our love-centered guides and friends, and in the name of each and every person listening to this show. Thank you so much. And thank you for Lenice and all she said today. We appreciate it. And so it is. Amen. Guys, thank you so much for listening. And I'll either see you next week or the following week. And we'll finish this up, okay? Take care of yourself now. Have a happy life. Bye-bye.